Hello. It's been a while since I've been online. I'm sorry about that, but life's been a little painful lately. Um, I should have done this video a few weeks ago. It's about September 11th, or 9/11 as we more know it. I'm Canadian. I didn't have anybody personally in the towers. We had family that was supposed to be in the tower, but they didn't. They weren't there. Uh, so we're thankful about that. 9/11 hit me hard. It made it to the point that I can't watch the news. I can't read newspapers. Because I went obsessive over it. I still remember that day clearly. My husband, we weren't married then. We had just started dating earlier that year. And he was just getting ready to go to work. And he woke me up and said somebody was on the phone for me. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I got up. So I'm all grumbly. And it was a friend of mine on the phone, and she goes, turn on the news. And I'm like, why? She goes, a plane crashed into the tower. And I'm like, what? I still remember thinking she was crackers, I guess is a good word for it. She goes, a plane flew into one of the Twin Towers in New York. And I'm like, okay, so I turned the news on. And I turned on the TV, and of course all the news, everything was about the towers. So I didn't have to look far. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm watching the TV, and she goes, I'll talk to you later. And I'm like, okay, and I hung up the phone. And I sat there watching the first tower burning. The smoke. And my brain just couldn't figure out what to make of this. And I saw the second plane hit the tower. Hit the second tower. And I just remember watching it, wondering, what movie was I watching? It couldn't be real. Knowing all the time that it was real. And that all these people were going to be, all these people were dead. The ramifications of this was horrifying. And I was up here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, when this happened. That's a long ways away from New York City. But my heart broke. And I sat there. I couldn't move from the front of that TV all day. And then when the towers fell, it was horrifying to me how somebody or people could do this. What could have possibly these people in these towers, what could they have done to deserve this? So of course, my belief system changed a bit. Well, maybe more than a bit. Because my thought pattern was, well, how could God do it? How could God let this happen? Like, seriously. And I watched, I read, I collected, I have a shoebox somewhere in my house full of newspaper clippings. I have a VHS tape that is full of news about this. I have discs full of website pages that I saved. Ones that I couldn't print off because they were just too big, so I saved them. And I saved everything to a disc. I got obsessive. It took me 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks. It might have been longer. I don't know. Before I could rip myself away from the TV, away from the newspapers, away from the computers. My poor hubby, he didn't know what to do with me. He'd never dealt with something like this. And I turned to him finally one day and I says, we have to cancel our newspaper, I'm sorry. He's like, that's fine. I was hoping we could because it was too much for you. And I says, there's also going to be no more news. He said, I don't care. And I says, I'm sorry that this happened. And he's like, I think he understood more than I expected. I think he understood that a part of me died that day. I saw all the hurting, all the pain, all the desperation of the people down there wanting to rescue all these people and hoping people were still alive. And knowing that they weren't. The pain I'm feeling is nothing compared to what they're feeling now, or what they felt that day either. All I know is that I don't understand. I don't understand terrorism. I don't think I ever will. But I do understand that a lot of people went out of their ways to do something. The police departments, not just New York police departments and fire departments and something called Port Authority departments. I have no clue what that is, by the way. But nationwide, even Canada. I heard Canadian people went down to help. Not to mention that town up in Newfoundland that had all the planes show up in at their airport. I don't understand war. I don't understand the need for it. I don't understand terrorism. But I do understand the pain, the loss, the feeling of absolute hopelessness. Because I felt it all that time. I don't feel it as much now. But I do have a fear of it now. I have a fear of this happening. For months, I kept thinking of planes crashing into buildings where my husband was, where he was working. And I would lose him. Or I would lose people I cared about. All because of planes crashing into buildings. My heart goes out to everybody that had to deal with all of that down there. New York Police Department, New York Fire Department, the Port Authority people, the families, the civilians that didn't even think twice to go down and help. I may be Canadian, but my heart is there every year. I stop and I think about all of it. I don't think we should forget. Not now, not ever. Thanks.